Greetings, gaming citizens, Mike here. With the new year having already started, I've decided that I'll be uploading the same video every single year on the exact same day. Don't worry, I'll be sure to add small, insignificant changes so that the video seems new and fresh every year. Video games are quite an immersive medium. Instead of sitting down and watching a film's events unfold in front of a screen, you're the controlling force behind the character on the screen. You experience the story through your controller and feel more interconnected to the game's universe. Indeed, an art form of this caliber needs plenty of time to be perfected. What do you think, generic money-loving CEO?
No!
Sometimes, a video game franchise gets popular and makes tons of money. Yeah, no shit. And fans are always anticipating the next entry in said franchise. Games are complex to develop, so if you're creating a new entry in a franchise that's highly regarded for the quality of its titles, you'll likely need a few years to retain that standard of quality. Then there are game developers that do the opposite and take a yearly multi-million-dollar shit. Okay, maybe I'm being a bit too harsh here. Let's dive into some series that release games once a year and see if it affects the franchise's reputation at all. And if it doesn't, maybe we can find out why. One series that people point to for yearly releases is FIFA. In a broader sense, sports games of all kinds are generally released every single year. I can see why EA would release new games every year. Rosters for sports in real life change every year. Players get traded to other teams, some may retire, and there may be new blood brought onto the teams. Many factors can change the sports scene. This yearly cycling of player changes happens to be the result of a contract between EA and FIFA. The basic rundown of said contract is that EA is expected to release yearly iterations of its soccer games. However, they are allowed to use FIFA's branding and leagues hosted under the FIFA organization. Or rather, that's how it used to work. In May of 2022, it was announced that EA and FIFA would not renew their contract due to both sides not agreeing on extending their business relationship. Divorce takes on many different forms, I suppose. This will make huge waves for soccer video games because the FIFA series has always been the top soccer game. Whenever you think of soccer video games, FIFA is number one. I can't think of many people that would say otherwise. Going forward, EA's soccer games will now be under the title of EA Sports FC. While I'm not sure what FC stands for, I could assume it stands for something like feel crappy. Jeez, EA, I get we all have tough days, but don't tell me to feel crappy. That's just rude. While it seems that FIFA has had a strong fan base since its inception about 30 years ago, the question of whether or not yearly releases damage this franchise's reputation has become more complex. Previously, I'd say that the FIFA games made a good name for themselves, as players are consistently dedicated to every new release. However, with the inception of EA Sports FC, I think it'll remain up in the air whether or not the yearly releases hurt this franchise's reputation. We only know that FC will include other competitions like the Premier League and La Liga, so only time will tell if the FC games live up to the precedent that FIFA set before it. I could go over every sports game series in this video, but that alone would take a while, and let's be honest, a lot of the sports games follow the same trend of updating every year with new rosters and occasional gameplay tweaks. Instead, I want to quickly sum up how I think sports games can be even better going forward. If by chance someone at EA is watching, start taking notes. It's plain to see that every year, a new game comes out. That much we know for sure. However, if all you're changing is the player roster and gameplay tweaks, maybe consider making, say, Madden, a live service game. I know not everyone likes live service games. They are generally disliked, but hear me out. After downloading Madden to your system of choice, you offer those yearly updates that would normally come in a game case as a paid expansion. With this integration, not only is pushing out updates simple, but you won't have several versions of Madden taking up shelf spaces in stores. Instead, you just have a definitive gaming experience that's enhanced over time. If you still want to sell game cases, consider doing what Fortnite or Apex Legends does, where you can purchase a game case version of Madden, but you get some in-game bonuses for doing so. Maybe some kind of premium currency, or some kind of cosmetic items? I'm not too familiar with the game, so I don't know what there really is to purchase in the sports games. Let me know down in the comments down below. Is this a perfect idea? Absolutely not. Do I look like I have a business degree? For one, people don't hold live service games in particularly high regard. I think Square Enix has done more than enough damage to the term live service game. Additionally, I don't know how much money this would realistically save the development team, or localization, or whoever ships out the games. However, it may be an idea worth considering. The ball is in your court. No pun intended. Going outside of sports games, Call of Duty has had a case of yearly release-itis for almost the entirety of the series' existence. Ever since Call of Duty 2 was released in 2005, Activision has released a new game in the main series every single year. The only exception was the 2-year gap between Call of Duty 1 and 2, which I can only assume was to give the developers the proper amount of counseling that was needed after developing Call of Duty on the N-Gage. You might wonder how Activision can shit out these games every year. Don't the developers get burnt down for working on the same series every single year? Well, it turns out Activision has multiple studios working on the games at once. Looking at the release chart, you can see that Infinity Ward develops a game, then a year later, a Call of Duty developed by Treyarch comes out, and the cycle goes on for a few years. Starting with Modern Warfare 3, Sledgehammer Games was thrown into the mix as a core developer for the series. This means that with every release, each Call of Duty game had roughly 2 years of development plus enough time to do QA and be ready to release by the time their respective developer was up on the rotation. Looking at the average review scores for each Call of Duty, it seems the series' reputation has yet to be brought down from a gameplay perspective, with review scores averaging in the 70s and 80s. Yes, some may view it less favorably these days since Activision Blizzard owns the series, but millions of people still enjoy these games today. Fun fact, a few years ago, Call of Duty Modern Warfare was so popular on my college's campus that my school had to cache the game on the school's servers to prevent overload since everyone was downloading it. So I guess it certainly is popular. I have to wonder though, why do these games sell so well? I don't doubt that a good shooter can be fun, but how many times can they reuse the World War II theme until it blends in with every other Call of Duty game? I know that there are some games about the Cold War or something that isn't World War II, but for the most part, it's heavily World War II based. If you have a guess as to why, let me know in the comments. I'm genuinely curious. Also, while you're down there, feel free to subscribe. Really helps me out. Pokemon has been put on blast for doing yearly releases since Sword and Shield came out in 2019. However, before I cover this recent aspect of Pokemon's controversial releases, I want to highlight something I found when researching for this video. Just a note, the release dates that I talk about will be for the United States, because I live here. Starting with the first generation, you can see that Red and Blue released in 1998. Then you'll notice that Yellow came just a year later in 1999, and then Gold and Silver came out in 2000. Not long after, Crystal came out as a definitive version of Generation 2 in 2001. Skipping over to Generation 3, Ruby and Sapphire released in 2003, Fire Red and Leaf Green in 2004, then Emerald in 2005 as the definitive version of Generation 3. I won't go over the rest since you kinda get the idea, it's a bit repetitive, but the point I'm making is that with every new generation, there has always been a yearly release of a Pokemon game. And with every new system, there's only a 2-year gap between generations. To give credit to Pokemon, it's worth mentioning that in-game development, from my understanding, the platform you're working on doesn't necessarily make the game more complex. However, it does make the game you're making more resource-intensive. Correct me if I'm wrong, but if your game is becoming more resource-intensive, shouldn't you scale your resources with the amount of polish you're looking to create for your game? If you're making a Pokemon game for the Switch, like Scarlet and Violet, you're going to need significantly more resources to retain that standard of quality that you're aiming to push with the series. Now, let me be clear. I am in no way justifying the current trend of Pokemon games releasing in an unfinished state like the recent Scarlet and Violet. I'm not calling everyone haters because they hurt big game companies' feelings. I'm just acknowledging that with every console that Pokemon has appeared on, there have always been yearly releases. It just so happens that this is the first time Game Freak is working on a hybrid system, the Nintendo Switch. So the corners that were able to be cut with making a handheld game don't really fly with the Nintendo Switch, as more resources are needed to accommodate the Switch being both a handheld and a console. So would I say that yearly releases hurt Pokemon? Yes and no. While yes, the more recent games needed some more time to cook, Take one look at the sales numbers and you'll see that the technical issues didn't slow down sales at all. On the launch weekend, Scarlet and Violet sold over 10 million copies, making them claim the record for highest global sales for any software on a Nintendo system ever. So from a sales perspective, didn't hurt Pokemon at all. However, from a user experience point of view, the low quality of the final product resonated with a lot of fans, leading to plenty of negative reactions and overall putting Pokemon's name in the mud in terms of game quality. Nowadays, whenever a new Pokemon game is announced, everyone finds themselves not as excited because they're afraid that Game Freak will just cut corners to put the games out that November. Before I move to the next topic, I want to establish that I don't think it's Game Freak's fault that the games come out in the state that they do. Yes, they are the main developers, but they are merely working under the guidelines set by the Pokemon Company International. What they do is have the games release line up with merchandise, trading cards, and the anime so they can all release in a simultaneous fashion. If they took more time to work on the games, they would have to rush a filler arc of the anime and delay everything else. So it's not in Pokemon's best interest to deter from their current schedule, even if it does mean the quality of the games takes a hit. Perhaps one day we'll see Game Freak grow further from their current staff capacity of 170 employees to keep up with development, but I'm not holding my breath. Assassin's Creed has had a reputation for yearly releases, although recently Ubisoft has been less strict with releasing a new game every single year. From 2009 to 2015, Assassin's Creed games came out yearly, with 2 games infamously released on the same day in 2014. Granted, those 2 games releasing the same day were an experiment to test the waters with the previous gen audience versus the current gen to see how sales performed between them. From what I could gather via review scores, the yearly releases didn't impact the series that much from the perspective of sales. Each game averaged around an 80 on Metacritic and only started hitting the low 70s when Rogue released. However, the series did see a downward trend in player ratings, averaging significantly lower by the time Rogue released. So from a player's perspective, there was some burnout from the community. When it comes to firing on all cylinders, nobody does it quite like Mega Man. And no, that's not an intentional pun. In just the main series alone, Mega Man has released 11 games, not including spin-offs like Wily and Right No Rockboard. From 1990's Mega Man 3, fans had no shortage of Mega Man games to choose from on the shelves until 1999. Only after that did the series see gaps in releases. But to have several games out in the same year, for multiple years in a row, that's a whole lot of Mega Man to experience. Mind you, that's just the main series. Every subsequent series of Mega Man has had around a decade where they dropped a ton of games and then trailed off. Mega Man X had several clusters of a few games where a game was released annually. Mega Man Zero had a few games from 2002 to 2007. Mega Man Legends, Star Force, and Battle Network had a whole slew of games from 1997 to 2009, with a noticeably big year in 2003. Now, I've never played a Mega Man game, but even then, I still can't wrap my head around how players can keep up with so many different series that I can only assume all play differently. In 2003 alone, you had 6 separate games come out in a year, or a game every 2 months on average. Granted, one of those was Japanese exclusive for the Wonder Swan, but even still, that's 5 games in a single year if we're just talking about North America. Now, forgive me for what I'm about to say here, as this is just an unfounded theory. But isn't it interesting how every other Mega Man series kind of just died off in the mid-2000s, only to come back as legacy collections? Only the main series saw spaced out releases after the 2000s, and even then, the latest we have is Mega Man 11 from 2018. Could it be that Capcom burnt themselves out on the Mega Man IP from making so many series at once? If you're a Mega Man fan, let me know in the comments down below what you think of this whole multi-series debacle. I'm curious as to how the fan base feels about this. LEGO games are just like oxygen. They'll always be there, even if you'd rather commit step-on Lego block. Fans of the channel may remember back in 2020 when I did that Retro-vember mini-series and covered Lego video games. If you haven't seen that, I'll put a link in the top right corner of the screen and in the description down below. Anyway, that video talks about how Lego video games generally follow the same gameplay style in terms of features, level design, and quality. But LEGO is no stranger to having games in the public at all times, as since LEGO Star Wars the video game in 2005, LEGO games based on licensed properties have been released every single year. It also wasn't uncommon to see multiple LEGO games come out in the same year, as that trend only got more frequent starting in 2011. LEGO only just recently broke the streak after 2019's LEGO Marvel Collection, as there were no LEGO video games released until just last year with the Skywalker saga. As a fan of LEGO video games, I have to say that this doesn't offset the reputation of the games at all. Over the past decade, we've only seen the game's engine get better by offering more dynamic lighting and visuals, and even switching up the combat system in Skywalker Saga. Yearly releases, from what I've put together, don't exactly hurt a franchise monetarily. If a developer has the resources and the means to put out a game every year, they probably will, even if it's at the expense of the people that they're employing. While it's impressive that publishers can put out these complex projects within a year, you have to admit that taking longer to make a game can allow many more ideas to be traded around and built upon. That's not to say games that release every year are soulless and lack substance, but truly innovative game design has come from taking years of research and development to deliver the highest quality possible. But what do you think? Do you see yearly releases as a roadblock for a game series growth, or are you generally unfazed by having a new entry in a series come out on an annual basis? Let me know in the comments down below. Remember to think critically. I'll see you in the next one.